The scan runs perfectly fine on Windows 11. Let me show you. First, let's check my computer properties. So if you have a look here, I'm running Windows 11. Right, no problem with that. And if we go to the device manager, can I find the device manager here? Of course not. Let's try to find the device manager. If I turn the scanner on, you see that it is going to be automatically recognized by the device manager. And the funny thing is, it is using the driver created by LaserSoft that comes with Silverfast, even though Silverfast does not support the Scan Elite 5402, only supports the original 5400. And if you start the DiMAGE utility, I'm waiting for it to load, still waiting. I can see the splash screen here, but it's not in the correct screen. Okay, the software is up. You see that everything works fine, and if you switch here to color negative, you get all the advanced functionality without any concerns. It really works out of the box, all options. Let's enlarge this a little bit and go one by one. The interface does not scale very well with Windows 11, so if you expand the pre-scan image, somehow you see it remains very pixelated. And if you scale the index, depending on the size you pick, the slides will get larger or smaller. I mean the preview here, you see, and you can also invert the order, or you can revert to the original size. Since we have a lot of screen space, we can make them larger. On the top left hand side, you have option for selecting color negative, color positive, black and white negative and positive. We're going to go through each one of them. Master Setup allows you to create profiles. I have created one for Hector 100, one for Porter 400. Then here, you get the option to make an index scan, to pre-scan a specific image, to make the final scan, and you can enable or disable dust removal, restoration of color, and grain reduction. There's also this option to optimize shadows and highlights, and I don't know why it's not visible here, because I remember using it. You can apply pixel polish to the scanned image. You can lock auto exposure, meaning that you can choose one image out of the ones you have here in the film strip, and this one is going to be the source of exposure. Eject film holder, browser-based help, and preference dialog box. And if you just hover the mouse over the right hand side on the top, you get the ROM version of the scanner. If you go to the preference dialog box, you get the option for controlling exposure of negatives, auto exposure for slides. You get the option to use the manual focus dial that's available on this scanner. And you'd see different things. For example, if you have the gray diffuser of the 5400, and that's a hardware-based plastic film that goes over the scanner light, then you get different buttons here. Also, if you get the medium format scanners, you're also going to see different options here. Yeah? You can autofocus at scan time. You can pre-scan after choosing an autofocus point, index scan and loading, close utility after scanner. You can choose the color depth here, 8-bit, 16-bit, or linear if you're going to do some sort of conversion at some software outside of the utility, the Minolta utility. Here you can do a multi-sample scan. This is for reducing the noise of shadow areas. It really increases the scan time quite a lot. You can choose the pre-scan size small or large. I don't see it really improving the quality of the preview, so I leave it on small as it's faster. You can attach a color profile to the output files, which I don't use because I have calibrated this scanner with a target. Let's go back to black and white negative. You can rotate the pre-scan image, right? You can flip it. You can select the auto exposure area as we demonstrated. Autofocus will give us an arrow where we can then click on the image. We're going to demonstrate this later. And it's going to move the scanner to that point and then take multiple samples at different heights and automatically determine focus. With this option, you can automatically crop to the image size. The first click will give you a more conservative cut, meaning that you get to the edges of the film and no accidental image loss. And if you click again, then it will automatically crop a little bit of the image just so you get a full image. I really use this all the time, it's very useful. And with the pre-scan option for the crop area, it's going to do a higher resolution scan only of the area you selected with the first button. Then here you get the resolution. 5400, 2700 and 1350, 675 are based on the speed of the stepper motor, if I'm not mistaken. And the others are interpolated in one direction, and you get the output file size in pixels based on the input resolution you have chosen. I don't see how to change the output resolution here. I've never seen this option available. It's always 300 dpi. I would prefer to choose 600, but it's not available. Here you get a summary of the preferences of the image. So here I'm using autofocus, 16-bit and 16 times sampling. And let's say if I choose Adobe RGB output, then you're going to see it here, which is nice. It helps you not make any mistakes. What else? Oh yeah, you can see the final size of the image based on the... okay. Now I can choose 600 dpi output and input 5400, so it will automatically rescale for print. So this is going to give me an image ready for print, and you can probably automate it depending on the photo printer you have. So this reminds me a lot of what you get, for example, in Noritsu scanners and Frontiers, the more advanced batch scanning software, and you'll see that a lot of what you have here is similar to that, not only when it comes to image size. Well, since you're sticking to pixels, then yeah, you don't get a final resolution size here. Not sure what the output resolution would be if you select some of the other options. I suppose you could do a full sample input, choose the DPI for the output, and adjust here the sizes, but really, let's stick to pixels. In exposure control, you get here some options, some sliders, color-based sliders that I think will alter the intensity of the light. Don't quote me on that. But what I know, and I determined that experimentally, if I increase exposure, the scan times increase, which means it's really sampling an area for longer. So I don't think the LED intensity changes, but it spends more time hovering over a certain part of the film. It has some downsides, which I just deleted the file I was going to use as a demonstration, but we'll get to it later. But when you increase the exposure too much, like +2, which I had to do to scan black and white positive film, what happened to me was that I could see some lines across the edges of the image, very faint lines that don't show up if you don't increase gain. So that's something that I'm not sure if it's because of the hardware of the CCD or if it's the software, but something to keep in mind. Yeah. Then you get digital eyes, which we're gonna look into it later, pixel polish. image correction gives us some tools for grading. Since we are dealing only with black and white, you don't get, of course, the color options, but you get to do adjustments. One thing I don't like here is that, for example, if I move this, I don't see the changes real time. I only do when I release the mouse button. Right. Most people will scan this flat, but I really like the negative inversions that this does, and I've been getting my files ready straight from the software. It's really quite good. Another thing I like that reminds me of what I've seen people when people review Noritsu's, you get these quick adjustment tools. Actually, the Frontier has that hardware dedicated keyboard that you can do quick adjustments, and this reminds me a lot of that. So you can do darker, more contrast. You can go back. For example, brighter, less contrast. You can just darken and brighten the image, and this will give you a quick preview of how it should look like. And you can also reduce the step size here. So if you make, for example, 4, the contrast changes are going to be slighter than if you do a very heavy change. And with that out of the way, let's go through, before that, you get here RGB values for when you hover the mouse over the image, which is very convenient. You can see quickly if anything is clipping without zooming in. It's super convenient. This software is really nice. You can also compare the original before your changes, which is nice as well. Fine, moving on, let's load some film. I'm gonna start with black and white positive because this was the last row I shot. So inserting the film holder will automatically trigger the index scanning process. It's very fast. So the setting up process only happens the first time you start scanning. If you do multiple batches in a single session, then it will only do the setup at the first time, and the other scans are very fast. So let's select a picture. I want to show you an issue of the dynamic range. So I'm gonna go for actually this 4th picture here. This picture was taken by my cousin's daughter, of my cousin, who is the lady in the picture. And this is from upon a black and white film that I shoot with some frequency. So let's do a quick treatment here. And one thing that you notice that the scans are very dark, even though the slides are perfectly well exposed. The scanner has a very difficult time, like this, to punch through the slides. And I found out that I tend to prefer results by just setting it as a positive slide, but let's follow the process, assuming we would do the whole thing as black and white positive. So I will do the tighter crop, right? And we'll keep the resolution low for a faster scan time here. Then we would go to exposure control, and you see the slide there does nothing if I try to increase exposure. So let's say if I do one stop up and refresh the preview, it will actually rescan the picture at a higher exposure, which leads me to believe that it really does a longer scan, and I could see that during using the scanner that it takes longer to scan with a higher exposure, so it is doing something. Alright, pre-scanning is done, and the image still looks very different from what I see on the light table. And another thing I notice sometimes is this, even though the crop doesn't include the edge, the scan includes the edge, so I tend to crop a bit more than I would. So let's go back to pre-scan. Here is my reduced edge crop. I'm gonna do 1.5 stop. And you're going to notice here we are completely losing the detail on the arm of the guitar here. And that's something that, for example, if you scan with ViewScan, you get a much better dynamic range. At least for black and white positives. Although, let's see the results, compare the results by doing a positive image. Image correction. Here is where we could do things like make it a bit brighter, a bit more contrast, less contrast, brighter. Now let's do contrast up in a short step. Too much, undo. Bit more contrast. Let's see if we can pull the highlights down to avoid blowing up here the center. So let's just drag it a bit down. It's not great, it's not terrible. Can pull this shade up. All right. Not sure if I can straighten this. Let's not apply any unsharp mask. I see no need of this scanner because it's so sharp that I really don't care. I don't want a 16 times multiple scans. It's gonna take forever. Let's just do 2. We can keep the auto exposure on to see what happens. And let's keep the resolution like this. So we can scan to the desktop. Let's go to test 1. Now here, if you would want, you could pre-adjust, pre-grade, let's say, all your pictures, and then you control-click the index, and the scanner will batch scan all of them. It works okay. And then, you know, if you're scanning a very high resolution images, the scanner is gonna be busy for 10 minutes, and you can get to do something else. If you're not doing multi-pass scanning, and if you're not doing dust removal, it actually scans very fast. So the picture reminds me a lot of what I see on the light table as it is now, but the guitar arm here is really blown up, and also a little bit here on her chest. But otherwise, it's a very contrasty image, looks really good. It's blown up here as well. Doesn't look like this on the slides. So yeah, this is how black and white positive slides looks. But the workaround I found is, for example, I can go back here, mark it as a color positive. Right? I can, let's see if I can reset the parameters. And I still get the blown up guitar arm, which is kind of, look at this. If I hover the mouse, the tone curve meter shows where I am. It's pretty awesome. Let's do some grading here. So I'll pull this one down, keep this straight up. Okay, I managed to pull this down a little bit. Very cool grading. I didn't know it could do that. Maybe I'm gonna start getting a little bit better results. Alright, so now that we have set the tone curves, let's see if I can bring it a bit brighter, a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. Pull this one a bit up, for a bit more contrast. Alright, let's see if by scanning this as a color positive we can get a bit more detail. So how it scans, I really like this rendition of the picture, but see, this arm here doesn't look good, you know, like it's really very sharply clipping. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind this really at all. Let's wait for the second scan. So of course, now the whole slide has a color cast. I didn't get the extra dynamic range I was looking for. Oh, it's still quite nice punchy image, but I don't like these blown highlights because they are not in the original picture. I've looked at this in the light table. I actually don't really mind the color cast that scanning this FOMA R gets. It looks like a bit sepia. It's really nice. I wouldn't mind sending this straight like this to the printer actually. In any case, I will scan another example of FOMA Pen R, one that has way more difference when you scan as color. I've loaded a different strip of FOMA Pen R from a piece of work I did indoors. You probably can see here I'm at 250 f8 and it's two 400 watt strobes lightening the scene. So these slides are very well exposed, but in this one, if I bring the gain up, the exposure up, I'll get the bending here on the side. But if I scan it color, I get way more information than if I scan it black and white. So let's just scan first the color positive. I'm gonna disable auto exposure for a consistent exposure, and we can rotate, and let's run it. Actually, I'll even disable for now multi-scan because it should not affect exposure. I'm gonna show you the results of multi-scan and color negatives. They get very noisy in dark areas and this really helps. Let's try this. So let's do scan, test 3. And the image looks way darker than the preview, and I have difficulties working with this file, and it is much brighter on the light table. So let's get first a comparison with a black and white positive. Call it test 4. And the exposures look more or less the same, but if I try to adjust this, I have way more information in the color scan. Let's do the exposure up. So let's do exposure control. Let's do 1.5. So the scan took longer, and I have a little bit more of information compared to the test 4, but I should not have had to boost exposure 2 stops to get this, because this is much closer to what I see in the slides in comparison, you know, to 4. Problem now is if I zoom in, I probably cannot see it. It's such a low resolution, but there is bending on the edge, so like some vertical lines that do not look great. Let's repeat this scan as a color positive. And yeah, might have done something wrong or differently because I'm not getting more information out of the color slides, more light compared to before. But yeah, of course, here you get the color cast of the film, whereas scanning as a black and white positive gives you a pure black and white image. So this is how the image look out of the box. Let's say if I would process this portrait a little bit, I would try to pull it up. Yep. Maybe I would reduce the exposure, refresh this. Then we'll back to image and we'll make it a black and white positive. Then I would, let's see, can I try this out? I would not go all the way in because it looks weird. Let's do 150. Maybe I could go on the middle a little bit. 115. And to make sure blacks remain black, I would maybe pull this one up. Using detail, let's do only 3. And what would auto setting do? Not bad. I'm gonna accept auto contrast here. It respected the settings I did previously, so the hierarchy is from the left to the right in terms of what the program is doing. Then variation of course comes afterwards and is gonna overlap the tone curves and the brightness and contrast balance. Let's say for example darker, more contrast, darker, less contrast. Let's see, brighter, more contrast, or just brighter. Okay, brighter, more contrast. And now I got again grayish black zones, so I can again pull it up. Now it looks stupid. Can I Ctrl Z? No, I cannot Ctrl Z. So I can reset this. Okay, let's not go with the grading assistant here. And we can do another scan. Let's call it test 7. Alright, so our original image on the right, test 4, is without any adjustments. And test 7 is pretty good. Of course, I would probably do some skin cleaning here. But you can still see the detail of the hair around the background, and the background is very dark, and I see some bending here. You can see 2 very faint vertical lines. I'm not sure the video is gonna show, but I didn't force it so much up, and this only happens really against this very dark background, and it's invisible in other kinds of pictures. So let's cut this video here, and I'm going to proceed to doing a color positive. So let's scan some Velvia. Okay, so if some Velvia loaded, you're going to see that out of the box, the colors are very, very pale. And it doesn't look like the light's table, and the colors really don't match what I see on my calibrated Epson V850. I was very disappointed initially. Let me see if I have an example here. Let's go to pictures. Yeah, so for example here, this image was scanned out of the box. You can see maximum resolution, it's very, very sharp. Look at the details on the fabric of the flags. When I saw it, and I looked at the light table, and then I looked at the scans from the Epson, I was quite sad. So I ordered a 35mm Fuji target from LaserSoft, and I created a profile. So let's apply this profile so you can see the difference. So if the image loaded in GIMP, you see that GIMP is a color profile aware application. I think Windows Photos doesn't do a good job at it. You see it's very, very, very pale, and this was just heartbreaking. This doesn't look like Velvia at all. But initially I created a profile using ArduCMS because I was having troubles to create a profile using the X-Write application that I own. So I came here, and my initial attempt was this one. Now it looks way better. But I went and checked the yellow here, and the yellow is still not as vivid as I recall the slide being, and it also doesn't match the files from the Epson. So I went again, I contacted X-Write support, and they helped me figure out why I couldn't create a profile. So after fixing the issue, I created a new one, and let's assign it. So let's assign the eye profile a profile, and you go see a difference in the yellow. Look now, the yellow is more vivid, and this is 99% how this slide looks like at the light table. Another thing you can do is, for example, with the base image here, you can go and apply Richardson Lucy sharpening. And if you look at 100%, it will extract some nice detail without looking over sharpened, unlike usual dumb sharpening methods. So here you get 100% with Richardson Lucy and without. I find this 1 sigma very high. Let's try 6.2 and 8 iterations. Now we have an image looking crispier and without looking really over the top. So you need to apply Richardson Lucy first before apply color profiles, otherwise some colors go out of bounds, and Richardson Lucy sharpening will return you a black image. It's done. So now we go back to assigning a color profile. Let's use the eye profiler one. And this is basically all I need to do. This image is ready. I will probably clean this scratch here, but that's actually a tree branch. But this is how the slide looks like, including the bluish color cast that I could probably remove with an auto white balance. Very vivid, very nice. And this is it. This is how this slide looks like on the light table. And it's ready to go. There's nothing else for you to do here. It's perfect. It's a great scan. So how do we achieve such results here? So going back to the scanner, one thing we want to do is disable color matching, right? We can do a multi-sample scan for the sake of the argument, and we don't want auto exposure because it will create inconsistent output for the color profiler. The color profiler is created out of a flat image. You don't turn on auto expose for slides when you create your color profile, when you scan the target. Let's do that. Let's keep the resolution as it is. And now we can enable dust removal, and these spots will disappear. Dust removal in this scanner is incredible. When I do dust removal on the Epson V850 on Silverfast, I still need to spend a good amount of time with each picture cleaning dust spots, and I would say 80% of my scans on the Minolta, using the Minolta application, come completely spotless. So again, double auto crop, right? No exposure required. We are using the color profile. No image correction required. We are going to do some levels adjustment later if you want in Photoshop. I follow Alex Burke's method for improving the vibrancy of this light, so it looks more like you're seeing it on a light table. But for printing a flat image, it really is how it is on the light table after you apply the color profile. So let's do the scan. Okay, we got the image loaded in GIMP, and you can see there is almost no dust. I can see one spot here that I could easily fix. But before I do that, let's first apply our color profile. So we go to Image, Color Management, Assign Color Profile. I'm going to choose the one I created with the I1 profiler. I don't know why GIMP is so slow. You see, it got way more vivid. Now if I apply my white balance trick, I don't think it looks so good. It looks very artificial. That's not how the slide looks like at all. So in this case, I would perform a small curve adjustment in Photoshop, because this color cast here that you see, it was really out of the flashlights reflecting on the flowers all around, so it really looked like that. In any case, we can clear that one dust spot here. Ah, that's actually my monitor. Alright, so no dust spots. And yeah, this picture is pretty much done. If you want to really be lazy with this one, if it's not a keeper that you're gonna print huge, just apply an auto adjustment, and that's it. Some clipping here, bending, yeah, that's not great, so let's leave it with the color cast for now. But we got basically a usable image out of the scanner, no problem. Okay, so next we're gonna look into color negatives, and I really like how this looks like when it's done. All the features work perfectly well. I'm gonna scan some new negatives, clean, good quality, and I'm also gonna scan some very old deteriorated negatives so you see the difference. Okay, so I took these pictures in Italy, and this is the view from the apartment where I was staying in Livorno. You can see there are some scratches. One thing about the scanner that's really gonna show the scratches, it's horrible. I found out that this here is basically my F6 is doing this scratch to almost all my films, and I need to take it to Nikon for a check. But in any case, let's do a negative scan. Basic crop, right? And now we get restoration of color, which we're not gonna use because this film is new, and grain reduction that we are not gonna use as well because this is a very new film. So we're gonna leave the exposure zeroed, and the digital ice tab only gets activated if you enable one of the other options. You see? So for example, restoration of color disables exposure control, but if you enable the grain reduction, you can choose the grain reduction for the strength of the effect, yeah? And I don't know why I cannot pick up this digital shop. It used to be available, I don't know what the problem is, it doesn't matter now. Let's not do grain reduction because it's Hector 100 and it's very, very, very sharp. So no exposure control, image correction. So now here, I actually look how this flat image looks like, but for the sake of argument, so I don't want more contrast. So we can reset, a little bit brighter, less, a little bit less, fine. We can compare with the original, I hope. Set. Okay, so let's do just a notch brighter. Okay, this looks fine. And okay, auto setting destroys what I wanted, so if we do auto here, you see the scan is so good that if I do auto, it basically does nothing. It's like it's just well exposed within the range. Oh, perfect. So let's just reset everything now. Auto still does nothing. You get now a new option of color film. You can do hue and saturation adjustments. You could do auto. Saturation is increased a bit. You can see how it affects here the background. but let's just do then a manual adjustment. Let's make it a tad brighter, and let's auto saturate. It's a bit too much, so let's go for -19, and we can do shadow control here, and perhaps make it a bit brighter, compensate for the shadow adjustment just by a notch, and perfect. So this is fine. We have ICE enabled. Let's do a test. So before we do this test, I don't want this multiple sample because I want this to go fast, so let's just go for it. It's going to be my test number 9. See, very nice and crisp image. The scratch line is so strong that I can still see it here. I cleaned it on my final scan already, right? But the big scratch from the sky here is gone. Right, there's just a little faint line here. It's easy to clean. What else? There is a color cast, as you can see from this building, and also the bench here, which we can very easily fix in GIMP. So let's go to GIMP. I don't know why Windows always opens the windows somewhere else. I would suppose Windows is good at Windows, but it isn't. So zoom, fit image in window. All right, we got 101%. I don't want. Let's say 100%. Now, for such a bright image, if you just go to colors, auto, white balance, GIMP's gonna get rid of the color cast for you, and it's still gonna look great. It's perfect. As it is now, it's perfect. If you want to have a bit more of control, you can undo this. You can go to colors, you can go to levels, you can pick up a white point, let's say this door here, and voila. Let's see, you can just do the shadows a bit, and we are good to go. It's a nice and crisp image, very sharp, very nice scan. Now let's load some damaged negatives. I've just figured out why I couldn't enable show. It's because it doesn't work when you have it set to 16-bit, which is probably fine because it's to improve shadow and highlight details, and if you do the 16-bit scan, you probably have this information in the file. But let's see how good the restoration with all this Kodak technology will be. So this I got from a friend. She asked me to scan it for her, and they were stored in a moldy box for a while. So you see there are scratches. These are at least 15 years old. There are color shifts. So let's say I'll try this because of the contrast, and this one here because of the sky is completely destroyed, and it's really not a good film. So I'm gonna even increase the resolution a bit and see what we can get out of it. We can even do some color matching, because we are gonna use the treatments from the program. I actually could have used the color matching before as well, because if we are doing the inversion with the scanner software, you could really well embed the color profile, yeah? So let's do OK. Let's crop our negative. Let's do restore color. Let's do grain reduction, and I'll leave Well, let's do all in. Let's say we want to trust the software and the scanner to do all the restoration automatically for us. So we'll select the crop area again, and let's do a scan. Okay, we got our scan, and this is actually quite amazing. The sky still doesn't look blue as it should, but the detail is good. Of course, this is a point and shoot camera, and well, these guys are not really shooting from a stable platform, but it's sharp enough. The colors are more vivid, and if you compare to the original scan, you can see that this is fine. You could deliver this to a customer and have the person really not be upset about anything, and just for a touchless effort, this is pretty good. Really, really good. You can make a nice print out of it and burn the negative if you want. Let's try the second picture here. So let's do a crop. I'll crop more of the edges so I don't get any white areas affecting anything. Also, it can scan faster. So let's have it only on the girls. Yeah, we're good to go. I'm gonna now do a comparison of with shadows and without shadow improvement, and the rest I'll leave on. I'll call it test 11 and go. There we have it. It does the trick. I look forward to scanning my grandfather's old slides, ectochromes from the 60s and 70s in this setup and see what comes out of it. Some of them look great and some of them deteriorated, but this will for sure give them a new lease of life. Before I wrap this up, let me show you a comparison between a scan using Silverfast and the V850 and the Minolta. Of course, here we are comparing more the Minolta is a better scanner, right? But the Epson has some things going on. You see here, of course, I cleaned the Epson image, so this scan will not do it justice. But even though the Konica is sharper, I actually like the Epson images more. And of course, here we have almost 10,000 pixels, but this is not real resolution at all. So for example, this tree. The tree looks way better on the Epson. See how here is this mushy gray area here on the Minolta. And I'm not sure, I don't think it's because of the scanner, but because of the software. On the darker one here, so you see it gets really, really mushy, that the details go on top of each other. Whereas the Epson retains the texture and the variety, and this was done with Silverfast and multi-exposure, which I think was part of the reason why this is so interesting. You can see the same here if you look at this window here. You see the bending of the curtain inside, and here is a bit of a gray mush. Right, whereas the Epson actually retains texture way better. But of course, if you look at sheer detail, the Konica wins. So if you look here, there's number 5 and the Conferenze Iniziali text here, or even the Coca-Cola umbrella, you see that the fine detail is way more present. The face of the lady here has some characteristics rather than being a blob of texture. So even at a lower resolution, you can clearly see even the balcony here that the Minolta contains way more information. But overall, if I had to print a scan, I would print the scan from the Epson rather than the one from the Minolta. And now I'm gonna go back to my cousin's photo here. Remember the guitar arm, and I'm gonna show you a scan made with the ViewScan. I don't have the fully paid ViewScan version, but the trial will do to show this part here. So let's go back and load a positive. Okay, now I have not chosen the same picture, but the camera was exposing all the same, and you can see already from the pre-scan that there's way more detail here on the arm of the guitar. Now if we adjust to a neutral balance, you can see that we are maybe like a stop under, but the highlights here much closer to where they should have been. Alright, so here's our file. It's way smoother and flatter than the scan from the Minolta application, but we have way more, let's say, way more leeway to work with the files. Yes, so let's get to GIMP. Yeah, so I would rather work with the less contrasty and more natural file of the coming from ViewScan than the file from the Minolta software. It's just too aggressive, too contrasty. I'm losing detail in the shadows, see the hair. So yeah, I think that is it for this video. So I love the Minolta software for the color files, but for the restorations, but for the black and white files, just forget it. Yeah, it's just too aggressive, too choppy, too contrasty, and honestly, ViewScan looks more like what I see on the light table versus these, you know. So Foam R is made for projection, and I would expect it to be really look something more smoother rather than the super aggressive, sharp curves applied by the Minolta scanner, the Minolta software. But you see, it works amazing. The scanner is great, and I'm really happy I found it, especially the Generation 2 without the fluorescent bulb, but the LED. And yeah, I'm gonna do a proper review of the scanner, not covering the software in so much detail, just a quick one with the best possible quality I can get from it in a later video. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.